Good morning. I'm Carl Debus-Lopez. I'm Chief of the U.S. Programs Law and Literature Division at the Library of Congress, and I'm also President of the ISSN Governing Board. I'm really happy to be the moderator for this morning's session on linked data versus linked open data, publishing the right data for specific user communities and their needs. And what I'm going to do is I'll just briefly introduce our three speakers. And I wanted to mention that we will take questions at the end of all the presentations. So our first speaker is Jochen Rupp, and he studied information and library science at the University of Applied Sciences in Darmstadt, Germany. He holds a master's degree in library science. He joined the German National Library in 2008 and was then responsible for the support and further development of the Union Catalog of Serials. Since 2012, he is head of the Bibliographic Services, and with his team, he is responsible for access, distribution, and support of bibliographic and authority records through different interfaces and formats. Our next speaker will be Ms. Joelle Aernoudt, and she has been the Quality Director of Bibliographical Electray Database since 2003. She has always worked within documentation, first at the University of Liège in Belgium, and then as a consultant at electronic document management for Unisys in Belgium, a company that specializes in providing consulting and technology. When Electray decided to change its system of production a few years ago, she contributed in a decisive manner to the feasibility and impact studies related to the project. And then our final speaker will be Mr. Pierre Boudigues, and he has been the IT manager at Electray since 2010. He graduated as engineer from the École Supérieure d'Électronique, I apologize for my French, del West in Angers. He worked for 20 years in TV and radio broadcasting, focusing particularly on digital production for news and sports with dedicated asset management. He has joined Electray to manage the bibliographical production and develop offers and services based on new technologies as open data or mobile devices. So with that introduction, I would like to turn the podium over to Mr. Rupp, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl. Downstairs now. So, thank you very much. As you may have seen, I've worked last night to make it final and put some things into the slides. Thank you very much, Seth, for the very good introduction and overview of linked data. I now want to point out a bit more the practical thing. So I want to show what you can do and what the German National Library does to put out their records, the data, out of the box, up to you if you like. And we do this because of our regularities and and I want to give you an overview about this. First, I want to talk about the legal basis, which National Library always had. Then about our metadata selection, what we offer to you. The data service, how we provide and distribute our data. And also the licensing and the formats, which is discussion now at the ISSN Center as far as I know. As a national library, we have a legal basis, and as every library, such basis is the bibliographic classifying and making available to the general public all German and German language publications, etc., etc. Also, we are responsible for production, marketing, and distribution of national bibliographic services. That's why I'm here now. Also, the German National Library provides a comprehensive range of digital services, including data transfer, the expert, catalog enrichment, persistent identification of online resources, and long-term preservation. That was the advertising. Our metadata selection is a bit of huge, as you can see. We have about 40 million records. We provide this data 3 times or 2 times a year in different formats. I will talk to the formats a bit later. Also, the bibliographic records and the authority records. Authority records are similar to the library of subject headings, as Seth told us, or maybe Rameau in France. These both records, the authority records and the bibliographic records, are linked together. So how works this? How does this work? If you have an author, then you wouldn't not only write the author's name in the bibliographic records, so you will always have a number, and this number will be the G&D identification number, which is similar to the authority record. So you have first linking between 2 different types of data. Also, it's a similar working on with the bibliographic records of the German Union Catalog, which is a very big catalog only of journals and newspapers. We have a lot to do with the ISSN Center, as you may think. And also we have address data of the Library Code Agency. Every library in Germany and a lot of museums and archives are in this agency, and they get a code, and this code also is linked directly to the holdings. The holdings represent every library who has a bibliographic, whereas this journal or this newspaper has a holding record, and in this holding record you find information about where's this record, where's this newspaper in the library, first or second floor, and also you will see which signatures it has and how many years the library has this newspapers until now, or maybe only to 1980. We provide and distribute our metadata over data services. Mostly, as every library, it's the catalog, the OPAC of the German National Library. Maybe we could have a sneak peek. Hopefully it works. So that's our catalog, and you may see it's a book, information and documentation, international standard serial number. Maybe it's getting bigger. So it's like that. You see that the record has an individual number, and also there's an organization, the publisher, the International Organization for Normung, and it's published by this. And this one's a link. And if I click on this, you will get to the authority data. This is the G&D on the left-hand side, on top. And That's the GND identifier, and you will see the different names of this organization in different languages, and this is stored into the authority file. Also, if you go down, you see, oh, there are more than one publication of this organization. We have about 45 data sets records which show the books which are published by this organization, and we have some books where the organization is only a part of the publisher. Also, we have a data shop. Yes, you can shop our data. That's great. This shop is for small libraries or for archives. If you like to have up to 10,000 records, then you can use the shop. You type in the records you like, maybe newspapers and some authority data, and then you say, I want this data in a special format, maybe CSV, comma separated values, and then you get it directly onto your desktop by downloading the records. Also, we have more technical interfaces. This is the SRU interface, search retrieve interface. It's mostly used by portals. You can send an identifier or author's name to this interface, and you will get back in a special format which you can define the record. This works very easy, and we got about, I think, over 100,000 answers every day. One of the big users of this SRU interface is the Karlsruhe Virtual Catalog. It's a very big multi-search engine. You may know it. It's a very, very good system. You can search literature all over the world in a lot of libraries and in a lot of catalogs. It's really huge. And if I send out one search, then you can type in, or you have a value to choose where it should be searched. And if you want to say, okay, I like to search at the German National Library, then your question will be sent directly over the SRU interface to us, and in a very short time, under 1 second, you get an answer back. Also, we have some more ways to fetch our data. There's an Open Archives Initiative interface. This is a interface for machinery. You can synchronize one database with another database on a completely other place. So, the ISSN Center harvests, you call this harvesting if you use OHI interface, harvests the metadata of the German National Library part of the data by using ORE, and the harvests could function every minute if you like, or it could happen once a day, depends how much data it is. It's a very easy way to transfer data and hold databases synchron on different places. Our big users are the library consortia all over the world, in Germany, Switzerland or Austria, and also we have smaller customers like libraries who only harvest the authority data. Also, there's a selection of metadata by individual numbers like ISBN or ISSN. Often this is asked by publishers or of scientists. If a publisher likes to buy another publisher, he wants to know what he has to buy or should buy, and what he likes to pay. So he asks, could you please send me all information about the publishing of the literature of one publisher. Then I showed you on the slide, the data service for dumps, 3 times or 2 times a year, the full copy of our database. So we have 6 different ways to receive metadata of the German National Library. So it's on you. I invite you to use our data. Licensing and formats, free of charge since July 2015. This was a step-by-step process. We started in 2012, and starting this, only the records of the current year and the year later were being charged, but this charge was settled down step by step every year until 0 in July 2015. Also, the licensing is linked to open data, except open data, so it's a Creative Commons license. It's free. You can do what you want with the data. You can sell it again if you like, or keep it yourself. It's free to use. Since we started to set the data free in July 2015, we get up to 4 customers, new customers every week, still ongoing. Our customers are mostly library consortia, big, small libraries, archives, museums. Then we have the library suppliers, then software distributors, then reference management software people, and also private persons, and a lot of research and scientists. Also, there are publishers who are interested in our data, and the big, now 5 search engines. We provide and distribute our data in different formats. That happens like this, that we have an internal storage format. This is a binary large object, and out of this we have our own programmed converter, we call it.
A journal about book activities and operations, and a publishing service with a book which is Web Semantics in Libraries, a book which was authored and published by our company. Great book, by the way. So we go back 150 years. We were founded in the mid-19th century, which denote the definition of the relationship between 2 books. So you have all these links interconnecting these, and you have categories. Categories are simple text. Da Vinci from Dan Brown is a simple work. You have the omnibus works, that is complete works. I'll try and speak a bit slower. It would be nice as the interpreter. And you have works of several parts, that is serials or bulk publications like comic books, serials. On the right hand side you have the illustration of our constellations or clusters of works, which basically shows you the Summer Night constellation. You start with the Summer Nights dreams from Shakespeare, then you have the translated book which is connected with this, then you have the book which was translated and published by a publisher, and you have the last level in the cluster of the constellation. All this is linked and interlinked, and you have other contributors. You have a collaborator and a forward writer. On the next slide you have here the illustration of the constellation as used in the production database. So this is Corto Maltese, the comic books, Corto Maltese, French comic books, and this illustrates the way we describe these works and the connections one with each other. So this is a record. So the serial publications we are working on, this in the blue boxes, and in the green part you have a box in bold which shows you the level we are positioned in our constellation, just to show you that the rich quality of data and metadata. This is the elector.com website, which visually represents what we have linked reference data, all the data which are showed in hyperlinks and in blue color, links everything, and we have a very complex metadata model in order to chain and link all this data. So we presented this works model to you to explain that we could have made another choice. We could have migrated data via large scale projects like WorldCat or and data BNF. That is, we could have waited for the book to appear and become visible to include it in our process, but we decided to anticipate and move first and produce our data ourselves in a more reasonable scale, because we have 1.6 million records in the elector.com database, and we now have 1.8 million books, more books than records, which is logical, as our model makes it possible for us to have books which have no manifestation, but we have the possibility of recording books from other domains, from the movie industry, from the video games. So in our production tool, we have made this migration, this transition, and we have tried to then operate it, to market, to sell these products as products and services, because we are a business company. So the first thing we did is to try and meet and work with somebody as brilliant as Mr. Van Hollen, who spoke to us about linked data, semantic web, and open data, with all the opportunities we could tap into if we were able to have structured repositories in order to implement links via the internet. We saw this as a great opportunity to validate the book's business model using the book fair of the current year, and we decided to engage in a project to connect some 1,000 books and their cinematographic versions, to present what you have here up on the screen. That is a list of books, their book formats, their cinematographic versions, and the links you can have between an actor, a director, and a literary book. The result is that after 45 days of hard work, we were able to produce 323 links. And the clearing stage, which Mr. Van Holland mentioned, was critical. There is lots of noise, quote unquote, even starting from a very well-defined, well-controlled repository. You end up with a huge mess of data. This is big data, but this is this is more like a big waste. So, and in order to clear the good from the bad is not so easy, and even analysis and screening tools are not enough. You need to have human intervention. So if we are to illustrate the potential of our books repository and how it can be used in other domains, the workload that we had to do the migration work is you get it at a time when you produce links, when you go into universes which don't have the same rules and have the same stringent high quality of data. So the cleaning stage is extremely important, and it took more than 50% of the workload.
Deuxième approche, néanmoins, je dirais que l'exemple nous avait convaincus et j'y ai vu personnellement l'opportunité de résoudre un problème. Je vous ai dit tout à l'heure que nous avions plusieurs sources. La première.
And I saw there a great opportunity to solve a problem. First, thanks to the cataloging that we produce, that makes one database, but we also have other databases on literary awards, media events, which are the current events related to the book world. And you know the importance of the media in terms of what books to buy, what should you read, So we had a host of various databases, and my responsibility was to kind of streamline the information system and make it more user-friendly. So we looked at a somewhat generic SQL model to allow all the production batches to pour into a data warehouse that could become a data center. The problem was that in average, our SQL databases kept evolving and changing. Even the E-model undergoes changes 8 to 10 times a year, so we have to add indexes and change the links, the connections between the components, the elements, because it's incomplete, or we realized there were errors in the migration process. So the relational process that we use via Oracle or SQL, it doesn't just take paying for good license to make it work. Anyway, we found there were too many operating constraints, but fortunately with the RDF and the triplet logic, we found the agility and interoperability that we needed to connect all our systems. So from then on, we were able to integrate, including relational databases, but also what our employees call databases, which are actually Excel files, more or less fat Excel files, but just by making those elements of relations. And if we needed to upgrade those relations to integrate what we did with our relational databases into the warehouse, this is a dynamic migration process that doesn't question the feeding of the warehouse or the exports that the warehouse can do. So the mere fact of centralizing all the data in an RDF model turned our stocking structure into a real data warehouse, constantly updatable. So for example, the bestsellers, it boils down to ranking, a URL and a date. And using that, I can find all the forms of expression of these books. And you can connect it to whether it's the luxurious version or the pocketbook version and all the other variants. So it's really easy to establish relationships. And this is primarily a technological problem before being a bibliographical problem. And that's why we opted for that approach. We also saw that we could incorporate the main functionalities of the semantic web, namely the analysis of unstructured data. I hope there are no journalists here, because journalists excel in producing non-structured information, and they wouldn't make the effort to structure it up. If you ask a journalist to assign a category, a subject matter, heading to a journalist, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. So that's why we embarked in that approach and that content analysis that creates links and that is upgradable and scalable. So the system was agile enough to make room for the upgrades we would need for sure later down the road. So in light of that experience, we decided to go back to what is the main challenge with the open data or the data web, that is to communicate all that towards the outside world, not to publish yet, because the business model of Electra derived from 150 years of experience. The idea is to sell art data, not just to publish art data. Of course, we understand the world is changing and all the rest of it, but for the time being, we maintain our balance. Well, not enough to increase our salaries regularly for employees, but we are still at a balance, and we can also take advantage of the opportunities given by internet to enrich our repositories with external information. But in light of our first experience on books adapted for the screen, for the cinema, we know that we have to look out for information, seek out information, and harvest it with the right elements so we don't have to do lots of cleanup after that. So we developed a harvesting technique for wiki data and BNF data, leveraging the bibliographical information we had. So an author like Jules Verne, just with his birth date and death date, allow us to sort out and filter many items. But with the harvesting, in the harvesting process and prior to integration, there is a control phase, a check phase, where we pre-qualify with indicators the relevance of the search elements, and we validate all the enrichments we may have made. And if the linked data model is, we will not store data anymore, we will just mesh out and connect those that are available on the internet, yet the response time forces us to do some retrieval, recuperation, retrieval, and display of those data, just because of technical limitations for the time being. So, on the basis of all that, what is now our logic? Where do we stand in our reflections, and how do we view the business environment of Electra as a company tomorrow? We do see that the main opportunity for us is to publish part of our data, of our information, hoping that those data will be used by communities. Those communities are not our customers yet, or they will be used by the book professionals who are already our customers, and that will make some needs come to the surface via the professionals who will turn back to the source to ask for additional services. Now, the fear we have and the risk there is that since all that information lies in open data, you have competitors or proxies with the best intentions of the world that can appropriate them, and from that they can offer services that will compete with us, with our offers. If I retrieve recent publications, I can publish a paper format that will directly compete with a small part of our activity, of our business, but a vital one. You know that the situation of the paper press is very fragile these days, and if someone is capable of publishing the same lists pretty much, maybe not as good, but at a lower price, that is very bad news for us. And when they offer that service for free or for a charge, they can become in turn a full-fledged provider and develop more services that will jeopardize us even more. Now we see more risks than opportunities today, and that's the opinion of most decision makers. A good example on our side is the magazine. When I explain all those challenges about the data web, I say, okay, today we have 8,000 subscriptions for a professional magazine. It's not that much, but yet we get some income, some revenue through advertising and selling the copies. We get roughly 2.5 million euros a year. Along that paper magazine, we have an internet site. Well, in order to have a better VAT rate, the internet site is free of charge. Otherwise, we would not be categorized as information press, and we would have to pay more VAT. So it's free of charge, and yet you have to subscribe. We use lots of technical resources to produce it. We have 16,000 subscribers, 16,000 accounts open. We have more than 250,000 views on a monthly basis, and it brings us 40,000 euros to be compared with the 2,500,000. The newsletter for 25,000 subscribers a day with an opening rate above 17%, which is a good daily score, and we get 40,000 euros from advertising. And now with the social media, 102,000 likes in Facebook, 32,000 followers on Twitter. Income, zero, nil. So you might say it's all very nice, this idea of bringing all that together and developing our audience, but actually the more audience I have, the less income I get. How can we reverse that pyramid? Invert that trend. We tried first to map it out, to formalize it. The first risk is to lose a direct relationship with your customer, particularly when it comes to B2B. We have a small number of clients. I mentioned 8,000 subscribers, but roughly speaking, we manage some 10,000 key accounts or accounts for 20,000 interlocutors. If those people become used to consuming our information on Google, you can key in any ISBN number and you would retrieve 80% of the information we hold. Well, you have to browse through several pages, but the information will be there, let's face it. Amazon, for any bibliographer, it's not worth anything when it comes to bibliographical referencing referrals, but they have tons of reference. You can even find 4 times the same book. And the worst enemies of Amazon, which is bookshop owners, become the first user of Amazon via the marketplace. So our clients who have our data would query Amazon to sell their own books via Amazon Marketplace. So, of course, Google and Amazon, they're there and they do offer services. But our problem, our concern is how can we preserve our privileged links with our few clients? We talk much about the Uber model derived from the GAFA model. Well, a company approached us recently, Aereo. They created private labels, books published by private labels. Their target are bloggers, all those who can influence through their recommendations about contents, become what we call prescribers. They're real influencers, and they're offered by those companies to sell their books, and they get money. So it's like everyone can become a bookshop owner. So this part of customers who should be our prospects might escape us if we cannot set foot on the information world that goes via all the social media. Second challenge, leadership. Owning the best information. This is the digital economy paradigm. There's no point in having great information if nobody knows about it. So we must do everything to publicize the fact that we have the best information. If we believe that our information or even our identifiers come from Amazon, it's all lost for us. So we might even contemplate feeding Amazon with our own brand. But when you're a small professional company, you have to find a way to ask Amazon to publish the copyright. That's what we do in our summaries. But we had to yield to bigger customers, bigger brands who were reluctant to display our own brand as well for the copyright. So we have to do some surveillance on the web to see how our abstracts are used and if they bear our copyright. The main challenge is to stick our copyright on our abstracts because they have a bibliographical value, keywords, and we want to preserve that in our model. Second challenge, paid for services. As long as your data are fully free and available, how can you convince someone that she will have to pay you so that you continue producing this data? Well, you have the notion of public service and private companies. They should complement each other. We have to properly identify those data that are to be opened and shared, and analyze why those with more added value might be sold. I talked about bestsellers. Today we could have bestsellers lists for each Princeps work, which is meaningful, but all we were able to sell was some alarm alert as soon as a book is published in a pocketbook version, we signal it. So in there you have somewhat a small ecosystem that emerges, but it's not the virtuous ecosystem for enrichment. It's not the right way to do it, yet it does illustrate where the service component lies. And then the last challenge at the heart of our discussions, what we call proprietary identifiers. There is no better way to totally lock down the economy but by disseminating our identifiers. If the users consume our identifiers, if they place it in their information system, then it's indispensable to update the identifiers and we prime the pump. But, however, if the client or the proxy appropriates those identifiers and moves more swiftly than we do, it's a risk. We are an ISSN agency, but we have issues on that. ISTC, it's even worse. So we really have to properly understand this notion of identifiers and what to do with them. There again, we oscillate between those beautiful opportunities and the fears and risks they raise. I'm an operational person and a manager, but when I try to discuss those issues, it always brings me back to a story we used to say about consultants at Capgemini. A decision maker was riding a balloon in the sky and he got lost in the fog. So he tried to go back to the ground to locate himself. He didn't recognize the place, and from up there he called someone who was walking by. Can you help me? The walker said, maybe. Where am I? You're about 5 meters above ground. So the decision maker said, well, you must be some technician, a bibliographer. Yes, how did you guess? It's easy. What you say is accurate, but it's of no use to me. Wow, says the technician, you must be a decision maker then. Oh yeah, how do you know? It's easy. You don't know who you are, where you go, but now it's my fault. You blame me. And this is the situation today. In a nutshell, we've demonstrated internally that there was out there some added value and a future for our information and production system via this promising technology. However, how can we make sure, it's such a pretty business model, but it goes beyond the mere selling of catalogs, beautiful products all wrapped up, but disseminating data and selling data-related services is much more problematic. And I feel today there are more internal hurdles than external hurdles. And I believe Shakespeare said that when an outcome becomes unavoidable, it's better to fully embrace it. But try ISBN or EN, but those are our proprietary identifiers. And since we were quite upstream, or we are advanced in cataloging. We create, we are upstream, so we create our identifiers before we get standardized identifiers. For this added value, would it be better to circulate in turn to disseminate our own identifiers, or isn't there a risk to automate one form of identification somewhere else, and we would be stripped of this added value that was our own?
Bonjour, Clément Houry, Centre International.
Good morning, Clément Houry from ISSN IC. I have questions for the people working on the Electra program. What format do you use for your RFB-rized catalog? How does it work concretely? Did you get it? She says. Okay, I'll hand over to my colleague who is the real professional. I'm only assessing her work, but she does it all. Well, same thing here. We created a proprietary format with a software that was developed just for us, and today we're capable of exporting those data, restructuring them. We did something with a granularity, with a very fine granularity. All the orders placed to us regarding some works, well, we started from something very fine, small level, and we recompiled the data to reproduce an XML. We reconstituted XML exports, but the structure of the database is proprietary. Microphone. Today we're able to export in XML. Yeah, they should use the microphone to ask questions. Yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
Vous avez un format.
Okay, you have your own internal format. So my question is, what export format do you use so as to retain all that wealth you have attached to your proprietary format? We can do it in Unimark, Onyx 3.0 and Onyx 2.1 Mark, XML, CSV, and also formats that are proprietary to our customers. Today we already export some data, but we haven't exported it all. We haven't had that opportunity, and maybe we're not allowed to. We don't have the right or the wish to do so. But today, anyway, for some clients' projects, for our services, we can export numbers of works, and our customers, with the metadata we give them, can reconstitute a mini work model. It's not the totality, and we might not disseminate it all, but we've already done it for several customers. But we also have to work for the best interest of our clients too. You know, we do have clients, and the library clients, particularly, who would be capable of receiving this works model, are totally experimental in nature. So each and every time we have tried, because we have tested it several times, it's also a big integration project for us. We have publishers who are very talented but not expert in cataloging. They're the job owner, and our job ownership is involved in cataloging but not in all the constraints. We are like the transmission belt in there, and instead of creating income, we create expenses. It's a paradox, but it's only normal, you know. But we are waiting for this big technological leap to become mature, and all that cultural changes to get closer to the FRBR model, and then we have our full role to play.
I think Peter was next, so.
Okay, thank you. I've actually got two questions, one for each speaker. If I may switch, though, actually to have a first speaker. You made a statement, Peter Burnhill, University of Edinburgh, Edina. You made a statement about links to the web not working, one of your latter statements. This is part of a more general problem of dependence upon things that are web today and gone tomorrow. And it's come up with something which we've termed reference rot, in a project called Hyperlink. So I refer you to hyperlink.org for literature there on proof of the extent to which there is reference rot, and also some of the remedies that one now needs to adopt In particular, when you think it is important, make sure that you trigger the archiving of that in a web archive and retrieve the URI to that date timestamp picture on the web that you used. This is a much bigger problem, but anyone with linked data in particular, where you are generating dependencies on something else, you have to really make very, very sure that that dependency will be there. And I think it's an Achilles heel in some of the work that's now being done.
Sure.
But how do you, as a library, make sure that your authoritative statements are going to be not so brittle?
Because we know that's a social challenge.
It's not just a social challenge, it's a technical challenge. It's not.
No.
It is a technical challenge.
No. I'm sorry.
If you build software so that when you see it there, you trigger the archiving of it, there, you cannot expect everybody to be good. If you go down the social thing, you're dead.
That's not right. The idea of Mr. Sasaki was to point out that it is not reliable that a technique can avoid this route.
There's more recent work I refer you to.
So the point, the initial point is that it is really a social problem. No human being will always or will not make faults. So if someone is responsible for linked data, he will always has to trigger and to do with this root system, we call it. And so it's on ourselves and not on the technique. You can implement wonderful techniques, really, and you can make it better as it is now, but it will always be a social problem.
We can give you something which can help you be better than you suppose.
Yes, but if this system maybe does not work for 10 or 20 minutes, we have root. So it's always, again, a social problem. You have to monitor the system. So the idea behind that is, in a more philosophical way, you can have technique over technique over technique, but to get to a resource in a library, physical or in the internet, is it always a social thing. And the human being is responsible for that, and you can put on a lot of technique, but at the end it will always be a social problem. And that's, for me, is this the point and the really thing that we know and accept, that we have in our minds and as a human being a social responsibility to look after our data with a lot of technique or a bit less, but you always have the social component and responsibility to trust it. And so I said really hard, no, that's not the solution. Do you get me?
Okay, I think Regina.
There are many things where you want to use software in order that you be good. All right. So I'll show you afterwards what you should be.
Yeah, nice. Thanks.
Regina's next, and then.
Didn't you have a second question?
I just want to elaborate on this as well, because I'm from the BNF and I'm working on the persistent identification of our records, among other things. And just to build on that, to say that not only is it a social and technical, there are technical and social issues, but also I would say librarianship and stewardship issues that are related to how basically the catalogers will be aware of what they're doing on the records and what impact it has on the link rot or not or no link rot actually. So we are trying to raise awareness among that issue, because we have persistent identifiers for a record, but if the cataloger deletes a record, you know, it's I'm just mentioning that among all those things, we also have a really huge task at hand that is related to basically raising awareness among the librarians and the catalogers, so that they know what their mergings of records, their deletions of records, whatever impact they may have, and the fact on the technical issue that even if they delete it, we make sure that we do not reassign this identifier.
Regina is next. She has a microphone. So.
Regina Reynolds from the US ISSN Center at the Library of Congress.
Microphone doesn't work.
And there must be something wrong with the...
Regina Reynolds from the US ISSN Center at the Library of Congress, and I want to thank the speakers from Electra for giving us a window, many of us from libraries or government agencies, giving us a window into the world of commercial production. For libraries and government agencies, I think our mission is to make information freely available. It's a strong mission. And so my question, and I can understand the concerns from commercial organizations who, after all, have to stay in business. My question is, I think that partnerships and complementarity, as you mentioned, is one way forward. What kind of research or investigations are you doing to find the value added or the complementary way to work with the free information?
To be fully frank and honest, there's no real demand of cooperation between us two worlds. Having said that, we know each other, we mingle and meet, but the situation is such that is more a competition than a cooperation. So on the side of France, and this may be very French specific, officially everybody is pushing for more collaboration, more cooperation, but the means and resources are not there except for a few lunchers and some nice conferences as this one to meet and share and exchange. So I think there would be much to gain to engage in more cooperation, but the line between the boundary and the separation, the public-private separation in the French market doesn't help. Having said that, the respective and reciprocal perception of what we have one from another, or what can be done together is not based on mutual understanding and sharing and cooperation, which I deplore.
John?
John Aykroyd, Cyber Research in University College London. This is a follow-up to Regina's question for the Electra guys. I'm wondering if you have in any way thought about essentially inverting your business model as it currently stands. As I understand it, your major customers are libraries. Are you looking, maybe thinking about, I would say, inverting that and charging or somehow working with publishers to provide an income stream to enhance and continue the business?
Unfortunately, je le dis en anglais parce que je cherche le mot exact en français.
I will say it in English.
Aujourd'hui.
Unfortunately, today, in the ecosystem of Electra, publishers don't pay a cent. They are our main shareholders, however, which may explain why they don't pay a cent. The ISBN numbers are free. The only cost they incur is to provide us with a copy of the book so that we can produce high quality metadata which will support their sales. Having said that, we need to fight very hard to get this copy. And today, in a very tough economic situation, many publishers are even restricting this unit copy dissemination, so there are politics involved as well. In the UK, for example, the book scan recording of sales is done by poll institutes and panelists because publishers do not want that accurate sales statistics be published. And there's no system which consolidates the till line checkout sales statistics. They are major operators in the book industry which would like to have these statistics, but there are always barriers and obstacles from some parties. So the business model, which would consist in not charging distribution, but charging at source, which was I thought your question cannot be envisaged today. It remains a hypothesis, but we know we'll be confronting a wall of no, because even with the ISBN, we cannot break even. We get subsidies, we're supposed to get subsidies, but the subsidies only cover about half of the cost. And publishers doesn't want to hear this at all. They consider that a lector, as a business corporation, can live off the metadata, but they don't deliver anything. We build the metadata. This is our added value. Joelle Aernoudt showed you the principle of repositories. Disambiguation on names, you know, Mr. Smith, the equivalent of Mr. Smith, Jacques Martin. There are so many entries. So disambiguation and the work we do is highly specialist work, which is not recognized at all. And even worse, in the workflows we get on information about publications, errors are imposed on us because this metadata being fed by publishers are used to check on the internet that there's no theft of content. Well, if they made errors in the typically standardized form about the author, they require that we disseminate the same erroneous information, because this information they will be using to identify any pirates and any thieves on the internet. So, and our role of stimulators of the book industry is not being recognized by the main operators, that is the publishers.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I am from ISSN Indonesia. My question for Mr. Rupp from German National Library. I just want to know, do you use agreement or contract when you do interoperability or harvesting for open journal or open data from other institutions? And I think could you give an example what journal or scientific journal from open journal?
I don't know if I get you right. You want to know how we get the records and the objects into our library?
Yes,
okay.
When you do interoperabilities or harvesting the data.
We have three ways that a publisher can deliver his publications to the German National Library. First, he brings a CD. This does not happen. Second, we have a web formula. So he goes on a website, he gets an account, and then he can upload up to, I think, 10 records or so on at once with metadata. And for the big publishers, maybe Springer and so on, we have something called hot folder, which is similar to a FTP server, and he has an account for that, and he uploads his metadata packed together with the record in a special format. It's Onyx format, it's publisher format, and we import this directly into our services and store it in the database and give an URI, or persistent identifier, to the record. This is automatically and happens 24 hours the whole year. And maybe Springer sends, I don't know, but I think 1,000 records a night or so on, packed together with the metadata. This is huge, and we have an explosion. I didn't have the graphics in here, but the online publications, in German called Netzpublikation, net publications, are exploding. And someone said it will be a downgrade by the printed publishers, published things. The downgrade is very, very low, and so we have an enormous amount to do every year since the last 5 years, and the online publication starts.
Okay, thank you.
Clement?
My question is somewhat connected to what Jochen just said, but I would like to address it to a lector. So you said that you were cataloging the books with the books in front of you, but publishers are using more and more Onyx files to deliver them to Amazon and other operators. Is there a plan that publishers would retrieve these files directly? Well, to date, we retrieve imports, data imports for e-books. We catalog homothetic e-books, and we accepted to retrieve Onyx files, knowing that we are not we are not retrieving bibliographic data. We cannot allow ourselves to give a title to second issues, so we only retrieve physical description data and commercial data. With respect to retrieving book data, we are preparing for it. At some point, we will be receiving be it the briefs and the published books will have to be working with Onyx data. We'll be integrating this data and we'll have to clean it. So we are in the process of preparing a database import model where the field will have to be corrected and cleaned for them to be integrated into the database. It's very difficult to integrate outside data in a bibliographic database in elector.com. For those of you who know the website, if you look for the Nathan MAM brand, it's a database which sells artifacts and baby goods, baby objects. So we have included this data. They are there. We got the Onyx data. We got images. It's not very clean, really. Even in the abstracts which are provided, we provide abstracts. So this is not source data that we construct. So we have accepted doing that, and we've integrated various sources every time we have to sparse, analyze the data, anticipate any corrections, and for some we have to accept the sourcing and say we give you the information because for the sake of giving it to you, but we are not the source. So we are moving out of the bibliographic service. Our job is to sell bibliographic service, but this is work underway. This is the third project we've been conducting, and with the first trials we've done to retrieve and correct the metadata. The lead time has been much longer. It's quite paradoxical, even by reconciling and matching repositories. As I told you, having matchers on Mr. Smith, is quite lengthy and difficult, and it forces parsing the contents, analyzing the contents. And I'm saying this very honestly because I'm not a bibliographer, but I did cataloging for TV and radio channels in the past. It requires a creative work in order to have proper indexation of cultural content, irrespective of the content. Even a comic program, a very, even low quality level TV programs involves creative work. Producing it as such involves work. So of course this is work for us, this business, and there's workload connected to it. But retrieving information does not always gain time.
my other question, which was to yourselves. To what extent do you feel that the indexing and keyword work that you're doing is disrupted by open data and concept-based discovery? Do you think there will be a long-run business there or not?
We think, but we are not sure. Clearly, oui. Merci.
Tu peux parler français.
Plus
the more we are improving or increasing our understanding of the domain, the more we are going into the domain, the more convinced we are that there are opportunities, but the risks grow at the same speed as well. So this is what we are confronted with. But this is an investment, a financial investment, to gain an understanding of all this. As a CIO, as Chief Information Officer, I was authorized to set up an RDF data warehouse with our partner called Antidote. I forgot to mention their name. They are setting up operations in the US, but I was not given financial means to reinvest and experience or experiment. There was a proof of concept which I mentioned, that is from the books to the movies. We could it would be desirable to do more proofs of concept, but I don't have the financial and human resources to do that. And we are focusing on the bibliographic services production, and we don't have the pocket Zeke enough to do that. And possibly the partnership and collaboration that was mentioned would be very meaningful in this respect.
Yes. If you could.
Une dernière question peut-être.
Possibly a last question, which might be a bit provocative. You said that you did bibliographic information, quote unquote. It's of great importance. I'm convinced of that. Which are the clients which need this data, this information today, with this high level of quality? That is, are you offering the level of quality which meets needs, or are you offering higher quality levels, higher than the needs of your clients? Let me start. Okay, we have various types of clients. Let me go over the 8 levels of indexation I mentioned. Every indexation level targets a specific client. Lexicon for documentation centers. We have a theme for bookstores, and Click and Thema will be of interest to publishers. So we have different segmented target groups. We are not operating at the level of quality of Bibliothek Nationale de France, but we're upstream from BNF. We provide the library clients who have to prepare for their baskets. We work upstream of BNF, which BNF doesn't do today. With legal deposit, possibly they do it a bit more, but we supply the data, and we know that when the books are controlled and supervised by the BNF, our records are crushed, are erased. But until the time that BNF issues the data, they use our data and they are satisfied with it, and we are happy with that. And the publishers also. So I often meet with former clients, and they tell me, well, today with our new supplier, because there are other suppliers than us who do not necessarily go as far as we do in cataloging and describing books. For example, I met with bookstore sellers who said, we are unhappy because we can't get the information we need. With you, we could use a subject search and get the information, because we have rules for describing, and we have an abstract which makes it possible for retrieving data or information. You heard on the TV the day before, there was a history book. It was in the 18th century. The hero was called Pierre. Well, this information, we make sure it is retrievable. In the abstracts, we use 50% of the words, which must be indexed for search purposes. And we also have indexed the tables of contents, which means that with respect to the outcome of search, to avoid noise and to retrieve as much data as possible, clients are satisfied. Now there's always the ambiguity. Other providers are doing the same at less of a cost and not as well. But our sales force meets with our various clients. Sometimes they suggest improvements and we take them on board. Did you want to add anything? Yes. I would say that this was the operational perception. Our clients are more demanding than what we can deliver. We do some web 2.0 because our clients, put forward their own claims or their own requests for improvement, and we take them on board, but we operate based on an 80-20 basis. 80% of the workload is decided, 20% of clients and users, but the level of quality is not of interest to a bookstore. But the bookstores may not be the lion's share of the users, but can generate income because they pay fees, because they have their own online sites, but the search you do on a bookstore search is different from a librarian. So it's difficult, and it's not a growing business. The sale of bibliographic data is not a buoyant sector, and some believe that the quality has to go down because the cost is too high. So this is at a time when we've incurred major risk going the FRBR way. I don't believe that there's no possible way back as we've engaged down this route. So today we engage in super high quality. This is really super high quality. Joelle Aernoudt successfully implemented this system. Now we need to be able to sell it. Who is ready to pay for the price, which is the right price? But the answer is possibly in feeding the communities, and when they got a good taste of it, maybe they will want more. And conversely, if Google is able to issue facets, 80% of the facets that you offer in your search, you're dead. I don't have the answer. I've tried and come up with sources of income in order to, with sources of quality which would have us offer better quality than Google.
It's almost noon, so should we cut off or have the follow? Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Donc, si est-ce que vous avez envisagé aussi?
Have you considered, or rather, have you contemplated asking the full text from the publishers to be able to do more automatic word processing and automatic metadata generation? As far as we're concerned, no, we haven't attempted that for the time being, but it would be feasible as a supplement to what we do, because I claim that bibliographical creation, it's a creation, has added value compared to what you could do automatically. Now, there is a subsidiary, a sister company called Phoenix. They use all the out-of-print works of the 19th century, and they're gearing towards that approach. So I observe, I have this example, and also I have analyzed and tried to model this work of creating bibliographical data, and I think the value resides in the creation and not the automation. It's heavy duty. The content analysis is heavy duty. I think it can meet targets in terms of marketing terms. For example, And the Electra database can highlight this marketing component and everything related to that in bibliographical terms. This is our ambition and our line of research. Well, maybe it's for the sake of other people. I mean, it's the opposite of selfishness. We're like Don Quixote, but we'll have to have a market for that. Otherwise, we'll have to give up, clearly.
We break for lunch, or? Okay, well, I want to thank our panelists once again. They did a wonderful job.